Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! All right. So, I'm going to start doing these on a semi regular basis again. Maybe try it at least once a week if I have a good topic. And thankfully, the news is bringing me great topics for coffee talks because we kind of live in a what if world right now. I mean, everything in the news right now kind of sounds like a coffee talk, right? I get tired every day of going, don't, don't, don't. This whole thing going on in Europe right now is a giant don't, don't, don't. What if? What if we're facing like war, like real war, like war we haven't experienced since our grandparents, our great grandparents' existence, right? The kind of war that strikes close to home and changes everything. So, what triggered the coffee talk for me today is that apparently one of the big military strategists in Russia, in the Russian military, basically said that if we lift a finger towards Russia, or if we attack Russia in any way, that they intend to and have the capacity to, and I quote, sink England or the UK, sink Britain underwater, just sink the British Isles completely, okay, and flood the United States and create a new naval navigation canal or what do you call it? Strait. Create a new strait, naval navigation strait in the United States, and name it after Stalin. Don't. Now let's be perfectly clear. They're threatening us with water. They're not threatening us with nuclear winter. They're not threatening us with fallout. They're not nuking us back to the Stone Age. It's not that we will destroy you. We're going to flood you. The specific threat was, we're going to flood you. So how could that happen? How could they flood us? Like I said, it wasn't necessarily a nuclear threat. It was the threat of flooding. If that don't make it go don't. I don't know what would. What you know what I mean? That puzzled me. But it got me thinking about the last coffee talk we did on tsunami subs and suicide drones, right? And we talked about these drone torpedoes that they can place along the fault line, potentially in Cascadia, and cause the subduction zone to create an earthquake that would then cause a tsunami that could flood the entire West Coast. But when they said the very specific threat of opening up a new navigational straits through the center of the United States, that can only mean one thing: that they're going after the center of the country, that they intend to split the country with some kind of flood. Not a flood coming from the oceans necessarily, although I think that's part of their flooding the United States and sinking the Great Britain plan. But they want to cause earthquakes or create maybe strategically placed nuclear detonations to cause an earthquake that would cause the structure of the United States to change through the center of the country, specifically the Mississippi River. And we talked about this in the last coffee talk, because right now, the Mississippi River, she's a going dry. I'd like to shoot him with my old 45 and spit some beech nut in that dude's eye. I got that backwards. I'd like to spit some beech nut in that dude's eye and shoot him with my old 45. It's starting to sound like we're in it's like a repeat of last week, right? But to a deeper level. Because even though we're having this drought and climate change, as they call it, whatever's going on there, seasonal drought, cyclical drought, maybe it has to do with the fact that we're using too much water for agriculture, and it's causing the Mississippi River to have less flow through. Now, having said that, in this scenario, the Mississippi River splits the country down the middle somehow. And you've all seen the climate change maps. You've also seen the tsunami maps. Um, you've seen the pole reversal maps. If not, go check those out. There are people that create these maps of the world, and specifically the ones that interest me are of the United States, post some kind of flooding event, whether it's from raising the ocean levels due to the polar ice caps melting, which is responsible for one set of maps. Another set of maps are what happens after a major earthquake and kind of global ring of fire explosion in the volcanic and the underground pressures reaching a point to where it causes massive tsunamis and a change in the actual structure of our continent, right? That something happens along, there's a fault name, I can't remember, it's Maduro fault maybe, that could cause a earthquake that would open up the Great Lakes and connect the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes and cause the Great Lakes to basically flood out and meet the ocean in the Gulf. So this would be the elimination of the whole entire state of Louisiana, the entire coast of Texas. Um, I believe that Missouri, Missouri and Arkansas, big portions of Missouri and Arkansas would also be underwater according to the Mississippi map. The ones that show that Mississippi River Valley from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico opening up and deepening and becoming, just like the Russians threatened us with, a navigable strait that basically connects the Atlantic Ocean in New England and the Pacific, I mean not the Pacific, but the Gulf of Mexico in the south, and just opens up basically a strait, say 300 miles, 400 miles wide, that basically creates, it splits the North American continent right down the middle from the Great Lakes and over to New England. I wish I had some maps to show you, but and then down the Mississippi River into the Gulf, making Oklahoma completely high and dry. That's God works in mysterious ways. I told you God moved me to Oklahoma, and when I got here, I found out through some coincidences and some randomness that I'm in a safe place according to the Pentagon. That this is a safe place for people to live and ride out what they see already is coming. So, how could the Russians carry out such a threat to sink Great Britain and split the United States down the middle, creating a new strait, a navigable strait that they apparently, after doing it to us, would name after Joseph Stalin? Russians are the most arrogant people. That's just something I finally discovered. The Russians just think they're all of them. No matter how sawed off and little they are, they think they're the invincible Russian bear. They're like John Wayne, but for real. You ever watch Russians fight on the internet? Like, I guess they don't have insurance laws there, and traffic laws are more like suggestions. So people run into each other all the time, and then these big Donnybrook fist fight brawls happen, where they just jump out of their cars and go to wailing on each other, or pull out weapons even, and even to the point where they'll kill each other over traffic accidents in Russia. Um, Russians don't back down, really. I mean, and that's probably why Russia's never been conquered. I mean, let's just be real about it. Russia has never really been successfully conquered. The Byzantines brought them in to Western culture through the acceptance of Catholicism some 1,500 years ago, Eastern Orthodox Christianity through Byzantium. But the Byzantine Empire didn't really fight the Russians. They just kind of agreed to bring them in. They converted them instead of fighting them. They fought them for a minute, and as it turned out, it was just too much for them. So Russians, man, they just got a different way of thinking. Something that Vladimir Putin recently said was that if we push this to nuclear exchange, then the West, America, and Great Britain were going to go to hell, and Russia was going to go to heaven. So they don't have a problem with the threat of mutual destruction because they see themselves as morally superior to America, which is weird because Americans see themselves as morally superior to Russians. And it depends on how you measure that, I guess. Once upon a time, there wasn't any country more morally superior than the United States. The United States of America was literally a bastion of Judeo Christian values, but not so much anymore. Welcome to the 21st century, not so much at all anymore. And so, um, when Russia came out of the Soviet Union and when they let go of communism and they stopped enforcing atheism and allowed the Eastern Orthodox Church to come out of the shadows and come out of the catacombs where they had been keeping their faith alive in the way of the old original Roman occupied church. That in the days of the Roman Empire, when Christians were being persecuted, they met in the catacombs, in the caves, in the quiet, in the backwoods, in secret, wherever they could, to keep their faith alive through persecution. And this is what the Russian Orthodox Church did in the Soviet Union to keep their faith alive. And when that was lifted and they were allowed to come out in the open, they had a resurgence of Christianity in Russia. So there's a reason why Russians see themselves as the good guys and us as the great Satan. So when you have that kind of ideology, then you aren't afraid to die for your beliefs. You think you're right, so you're ready to go out with a blaze of glory. So I'm afraid that to poke the Russian bear is suicidal, that they have no problem in wrapping themselves around us, grabbing a 100-pound weight and jumping in the deep part of the ocean and drowning us both together at the same time. It's a little scary. They say don't mess with Texas. I'm starting to think don't mess with Russia because they don't play like they're not bluffing. In fact, they're the kind of people that tell you we're not going to fight you, and the whole time they're fixing to fight you. Right? You just yeah. I think we're making a huge mistake, but hey, let's go back to the coffee talk. I don't want to get political. But they are threatening to flood the United States. So how could they do that? Well, we talked about these drone, submarine deployed drone torpedoes that can just go lay in strategic places. And that explains to me how they flood the coastlines. But how do they split the country down the middle? How do they get that, was it the Maduro? I should have looked this up. I don't know. I don't know. I'll never come up with a name at this point. But there's a fault line that if there was a major earthquake in that fault line, it would cause parts of Tennessee to be underwater. That it could open up the Mississippi and cause it to flood in several hundred miles in each direction, drawing in salt water from the Gulf of Mexico, apparently, and connecting basically the freshwater inner sea of the Great Lakes with the Atlantic Ocean up in New England and wherever that is, wherever that comes in. And I'm not real familiar with that part of the country. And then my stomping grounds down the Mississippi River Valley down into flooding several states, including most of Arkansas. And it would mean that Oklahoma would basically be oceanfront property on a big internal gulf. That there would be it would be destructive and horrible, but I could see surviving that as an Okie and actually going there and seeing it post after it's all over, like going over and seeing what happened. But how could the Russians do that? Well, one thought is that they send these. This is scary because I don't even know that we have defenses to to defend against this sort of attack. But we talk about these drones, these electric drones that are sent out from nuclear submarines. I talked about them laying along the coastline, dormant until they're flipped on. What if the Russians are so confident because they've already deployed these drones? They're setting in the right place, waiting for the signal to be set off, and they didn't just mine the Pacific and Atlantic coast. Let's assume they mined the Gulf. Let's assume they sent these very hard to detect, silent, nearly electric drone torpedoes all the way up the Mississippi River until they're laying along the channel undetected at the bottom of the Mississippi River, waiting to get their satellite signal to detonate. You know, several times in my life, I've been involved in a physical altercation with somebody who was being hyper aggressive. And in several of these instances, the person was feebler than I am, more feeble than I am. They were much smaller than me. And there was nothing to indicate that they could do anything except get their butt royally whipped if they stood up to me. But yet they were hyper aggressive, daring me even, just like taunting me, kind of like Doc Holliday on the front steps there on the front porch in Tombstone when he stands up out of nowhere when there's another altercation he's got nothing to do with, stands up and puts his hand on his pistol and goes, I'll be your Huckleberry. I'm your Huckleberry. So when you got somebody who seems like they have a certain amount of confidence, they're either suicidal and they're looking to die, which makes them dangerous, or they know something you don't know. Like they got a gun and you don't. Like they got a big gun and you don't, and they're hoping that you just push. They understand they're smaller than you and you're bigger than them, and that's the excuse they're going to use to shoot you or stab you or whatever it is they've got up their sleeve. So, in my opinion, these Russians are acting like they know something we don't know. They're acting like that little guy with a gun in their pocket. They're standing up to the great Satan in such a way that it makes me think they got something on us. It could be. I don't know. I ain't trying to spread fear. It's a coffee talk. This is all about what if. But it does make you go, what if, do. Why such a specific threat of flooding? I've been around a long time. I never heard such a specific threat that they have the capability to sink the British Isles, flood the coastline of the United States, and split our country in half, creating a new navigable Bering Strait type waterway from the Gulf of Mexico to the Atlantic Ocean. Why would they be so confident? Why? I need coffee. I need the comfort of the black juice, of the black steaming bean juice to help me. Not really. I trust God. I trust God. Maybe y'all should move to Oklahoma, the only place that might be left high and dry. There's no reason to bomb Oklahoma because who'd want to? There's nothing here to destroy, and there's nothing here we're stealing. So oh, we got some cows and some oil wells. I guess those are worth stealing. They wouldn't want to blow up our oil fields because they might need that oil at some point. So they probably would try not to destroy that. So I'm thinking Oklahoma's safe. In the John Titor timeline, everything gets screwed up that the only safe place and a place that's still kind of like normal is Nebraska. That they moved the capital to Nebraska, of all places, which isn't that far from here, just north a little bit from here. So what do you think? Is the Russian bear just being mouthy? Are they just being the confident, overconfident, vodka drinking, you think you're big enough to fight me kind of bar talk? Is this bar talk? Is this saber rattling? Why such a specific threat? They're going to flood us. How's that possible? The only way I can think of is to send those. They just see. Here's the thing. What makes the United States superior to other countries besides our advanced technology, which isn't as advanced as it used to be compared to other countries? Other countries are advancing as well. What makes us more powerful than most other countries? Our Navy. My sisters, I'm just going to call them soulmates. They seem like soulmates. I set him up. He was a singing buddy of mine, and he was a widower, and but he spent his life on nuclear submarines. He's a nuclear submarine warfare expert, and he's spent years of his life underwater, right? And so just talk to him for 2 minutes. He'll tell you how powerful our submarine nuclear force is. But we focused everything we have on a certain kind of technology, missiles flying through the air, dropping on targets. And I think that because the Russians have a smaller navy, because they have less technology, that instead of trying to compete with us, mano a mano, hand to hand, right, face to face, toe to toe, in missile technology, that they let us think we were winning while they worked on underwater submarine technology and these electric, silent, secret drone programmable missiles, basically programmable, drivable underwater missiles that can travel at even a slow rate of speed, that can sneak up on the enemy and place themselves. It's just, I don't know if we got stuff like that or not. If we do, it's my first time to hear about it. I haven't heard about it even now. Why the specific threat? Don't. It's a coffee talk. Tell me what you think. Do you think the Russians got something we don't know about? Do you think that they're capable of splitting our country geologically down the middle? Are they able to cause earthquakes that would cause literally the restructuring of the flow of a giant river like the Mississippi and open up a navigable waterway between the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, basically putting an end to the Great Lakes, making them part of this new waterway? It's really specific. It's spooky. A specific threat is way scarier than, hey, I'm just gonna whip your butt. No, it's like, no, I'm gonna hit you with a couple of lefts, and then I'm gonna put you in an arm bar, and then I'm gonna get your back. I'm gonna climb on your back, and I'm gonna rear naked choke you until you're almost unconscious, and then I'm gonna wake you up just enough to beat you some more for a couple of hours until I decide what to do with your body. Sorry, that's awful. That's like so. That's a specific threat. That's way worse than I'm going to get you, right? So they could have said this military strategist who apparently is in the know in the Russian army could have said, "We're going to nuke them back to the Stone Age, or we're gonna EMP them or anything." But to say we're going to sink the British Isles and open up a new navigable waterway through the center of the United States and name it after Joseph Stalin. Don't. I don't know. I thought that was worth some coffee and a few minutes of your time. And once again, I want to thank everyone who supports this channel and supports the ministry portion of this channel. And I just want to let you know that I appreciate every one of you. If you enjoyed this coffee talk and you want to give me a little tip there to put some coffee in the coffee jar, you can do that in the PayPal link in the description, or you can drop me a note to my P.O. box. And if you just want to talk about the what ifs, or if you want to get to know the Jesus I serve and tap into that power, we can talk about that too. And you can do that through email or through letters, whatever, however you want to do it. I typically don't write letters back, though. It's kind of one-way communication. If you want two-way communication, that happens via email, which is in the description. So tell me what you think in the comments section. Why such a specific threat? Is there anything to it? And should you all buy life preservers and canoes to carry your dehydrated food around in? Maybe we should start hoarding rafts. They're going to flood us. I don't know. What do you think? We'll see you next time on Coffee Talk.